Record. All right. So thank you. As both of you know, my name is Lisa Timmerman, the Executive Director of Historic Dumfries, Virginia, and I want to thank you for partaking in this virtual cookie swap. Our nonprofit is an educational historical organization, and we hold free programs every other month for all members and prospective members, no strings attached. For November, I wanted to provide a free virtual space to share recipes, ideas, and baking advice as you may be looking to incorporate new traditions into your household. I will be sending this PDF of this presentation to you probably within a week, so do not feel stressed to write anything down, and any recipe that you email me, I will include in that email to everyone. So starting with American cookbooks, we can open up Amelia Simmons' 1796 book, American Cookery. Although very little is known about Miss Simmons, she identified herself as an American orphan with a desire, got someone else coming in, with a desire to present solid recipes, share useful and practical advice, and remind society of how hard female orphans work to establish a, quote, virtuous character, end quote. This cookbook also had its fair share of controversy as well. In the second edition, Simmons noted that someone altered the recipes in the first, either due to ignorance or evil intentions. Her advice, collected recipes, ranging from her own to probably even one she plagiarized, to her belief in perseverance, helped establish this as a significant book to our American history. And the Library of Congress named it one of the 88 books that shaped America. While we could discuss the implications it had in helping the early republic define and retain its unique identity, we will instead save that for a blog or more serious academic lecture. You can find this entire book online for free as well. On the left of the screen, you will see her recipe, the historical recipe, straight from her cookbook. On the right is the accompanying modern version, identified using and adapted using more accessible ingredients. Note the ingredient pearl ash. This was the first chemical leavening, potassium carbonate, and it reacts with water and acid to create carbon dioxide. After 1840, saltpeter, something closer to our modern baking soda, replaced this literal ash. Unless neutralized with an acid, the taste will be strongly bitter. Unless you're baking traditional German recipes, you can substitute a half a teaspoon of baking soda for every teaspoon of pearl ash. American baking powder is a double-acting agent, while German is a single-acting leavener. Our next recipe is a butter drop. And as you can see from the picture, it will remind you more of a biscuit. Today we can purchase rose water, but you might not find it easily pre-1840s. Rose water entered English cooking during the Crusades, and this earthly and slightly floral aroma and taste became very popular. That popularity followed the British to America until the 1840s, when vanilla became more affordable. Thanks to the enslaved 12-year-old child, Edmund Albius, who developed a new and quick technique to handle pollinating the orchid, vanilla became a common ingredient. While a French botanist tried to steal credit for his discovery, and the French even claimed the child was white, we can now accurately attribute this discovery and technique to the young child. The next cookbook I want to introduce you to is Mrs. Mary Randolph's 1824, The Virginia Housewife or Methodical Cook. Culinary historians attribute this cookbook as the first regional American cookbook because of her embrace of local and available ingredients. Mary Randolph's families were distant relatives of Thomas Jefferson, although Thomas Jefferson's parents reared Mary's father. She received a broad education from writing and arithmetic to lessons in dancing and art, a stereotypical female education for white, wealthy women. After her marriage and move to Richmond, she gained a reputation for notable social gatherings. However, political differences between the Randolphs and the Jeffersons led to Mary having a declining fortune and the loss of her plantation. In 1807, she opened a boarding house in Richmond, which quickly became a popular and well-known spot. She eventually published her one and only cookbook that quickly became popular and resulted in several editions, although she died shortly after its publication. You can also find this one available online for free too, and I can include those links in my email. The first recipe I selected is the macaroon. I purposely looked for a recipe similar and came across these almond macaroons. Almond paste can be purchased, but it can also be made from whole blanched almonds, powdered sugar, egg whites, and optional almond extract. Almond paste is not marzipan, but it is similar. Almond paste also dates back centuries, with firm evidence showing the Ottoman Empire in Turkey utilized it, and later Europeans did as well. Recipes can be very hard to historically pinpoint, but Shrewsbury cakes, a very English dessert recipe, are no exception, as people speculated if these tasty treats were sold in markets. In 1602, Lord Herbert of Cherbury described them as, quote, a kind of cake which country people use and make in no place in England but Shrewsbury, end quote. The first known published recipe appeared in John Morell's 1621 cookbook, and he used both nutmeg and rosewater for flavorings. Henry Howard's 1708 cookbook indicated they should cut into little cakes and bake to be crisp, round, and brittle. While some recipes are plain, chefs added caraway seeds, excuse me, cinnamon, fruits, and other flavors to this butter cookie too, so you can go both ways. In 1824, Anne Maria Morris used a half a pound of butter, 3/4 a pound of flour, a half a pound of sifted sugar, 1 egg, and a half an ounce of caraway seed rolled into a thin paste. Although Black authors published domestic guides in the early 19th century, currently one of the oldest known ones, excuse me again, is Melinda Russell's A Domestic Cookbook, containing a careful selection of useful recipes for the kitchen, published in 1866. She provided a brief background of herself in the opening pages, noting her grandmother received emancipation, giving the free status to future children. Quote, my mother died when I was quite young. At the age of about 19, I set out for Liberia, but being robbed by some member of the party with whom I was traveling, I was obliged to stop at Lynchburg, Virginia, where I commenced cooking, and at times traveling with ladies as nurse, and always received the praise of being faithful. She married in Virginia and opened a wash house after her husband's early death. She later returned to Tennessee and kept a boarding house, pastry shop, and left for Michigan after a guerrilla party robbed and took her property. Quote, this is one reason why I published my cookbook, hoping to receive enough from the sale of it to enable me to return home. I know my book will sell well where I have cooked, and I'm sure those using my recipes will be well satisfied, end quote. Among her recipes, I selected jumbles and ginger snaps. These date back to the Middle Ages, with recipes appearing throughout history as they were simple to bake and increasing available access to spices in Great Britain made them popular. One author describes them as a combination of bagels, pretzels, and cookies, noting their hybrid nature and ability to last quite a while before going stale. Preservation Maryland claims the recipe came to the colonies via the Mayflower and provides a nifty updated recipe to their original from the early 1800s, recommending some honey and powdered sugar for the topping. American ginger snaps appear in the early 1800s, probably derived from the historic gingerbread that bakers frequently baked as treats for medieval Europe festivals and fairs. The first known recipe came from Greece in 2400 BC, with the Chinese developing recipes during the 10th century, with Europeans creating their own versions by the Middle Ages. The term gingerbread loosely describes a variety of treats with ginger flavoring, a cake recipe that appeared in the 15th century. Colonial Americans also baked gingerbread as spices became more available to them, and eventually ginger snaps became a popular food tradition during Muster, aka Militia Day, after the Revolutionary War. The Museum of the American Revolution provides a recipe that drapes all the dough into a pan for baking, and once finished but still warm, the baker cuts the dough into strips and/or diamonds. Just a fun side note before we move on, Germans developed gingerbread houses in the 16th century. Gingerbread has quite a rich history. Moving into the 20th century, we find more familiar cookies such as peanut blossoms. The iconic peanut butter cookie with a Hershey kiss in the middle was purportedly created by accident. According to folklore, Mrs. Frida Smith decided to bake her cookies without the chocolate chips she usually placed in them. Finding Hershey's Kisses, she went with it, and it became a family favorite. I've seen different versions for the Bake Off contest winners. Huffington Post reported that she won second, while the Fremont News Messenger reported that she placed third. Regardless, she did not win first place, but she clearly stole the show over the decades, as her recipes appeared on Hershey Kiss bags and is a favorite to play with, especially with different flavored kisses or even hugs. Although she died in 1963, eventually both Pillsbury and the Smithsonian National Museum of American History recognized her tasty contribution to our society. On the screen, I provided an allergy-free recipe without nuts, gluten, or peanut butter. I have worked with sun butter before. This is what we use in all of our children's programming, as we do not use anything containing nuts. And just so you know, it is more liquidy. Introduced to the market in 2002, Sun Butter Food Service and the U.S. Department of Agriculture worked together to provide this safe nut alternative. I've had kids craft it for little animal pine cone treats. I'm not sure if they're as popular, but we did see a squirrel grab one. So there's that. Our next allergy-free recipe is chocolate meringue cookies. The picture on screen does not contain nuts, and you can consider them optional in this recipe. Meringue is another interesting and older ingredient, and originally was denser. Although I've noted the 1691 recipe, historians noted that Lady Eleanor Fettiplace provided a Swiss meringue recipe, calling it a white biscuit bread. Lady Rachel Fawn also had a very suspicious similar meringue recipe, coining hers as Pets in 1630. In 1815, French chef Antoine Carême published his cookbook, changing the way we shaped the ingredient. Instead of using 2 spoons, he used a bag to pipe meringue, upping its potential and use. On the screen, you do see a modern cookie recipe from Food Network, and the only comment that I could find that didn't give this a thumbs up was that it was very chocolatey. So if you do not like intense chocolate, you may want to stay away from this one. From our member Carol, we have the controversial but delicious whoopie pie. Both Pennsylvania and Maine claim origins to this tasty chocolate sandwich-like dessert filled with vanilla or flavored cream. In 1925, Labadie's Bakery opened and claimed to have sold the first whoopie. However, a fire destroyed their records, searing all documentary proof. In Pennsylvania, residents point to the Amish for the origins of this confection, noting people used leftover cake batter, while husbands and children supposedly yelled whoopee when they found these treats. In the 1860s, the Oxford English Dictionary recorded whoopee as an expression of joy, with the more risque meaning coming by the 1920s. When Senator Paul Davis of Maine attempted to make the whoopee the official state dessert, The controversy reignited, and instead, blueberry pie won the distinction. While Maine has canceled their annual events during COVID, they had supposedly had it rescheduled for last year. So hopefully that went off. And while this one that you see on the screen is a less complicated recipe, Carol makes Whoopies every year and makes her own cream too. If you like those recipes or the cream, just let me know and I will send those. Another from Carol's recipe is the pumpkin cookie. You will probably see and consume Libby's canned pumpkin at least once over your holiday season, whether at home or in the store. While there are 45 different types of pumpkins, including ones named Tricky Jack, Ghost Rider, and Sweetie Pie, Elijah Dickinson's pumpkin, aka the Dickinson pumpkin, fills their cans. Dickinson was born in Spotsylvania County, although his claim to farming fame came after he moved west. After marriage, he changed his occupation from carpentry to farming, bringing his seeds from Kentucky to central Illinois, where they flourished, helping to launch a vegetable processing plant, later acquired by Libby's. Recently, Libby experienced some controversy over their canned pumpkin because Dickinson's pumpkins are technically squash. The pretty pumpkins people use for carving are not as tasty as their uglier relatives. The squash that is used here is a pale oblong fruit, and also it's not a vegetable, by the way. However, this is a discussion and/or debate for another day. And you can definitely add chocolate chips to these as well. I'll throw that out there. I'm a big chocolate fan. I wanted to provide one of my favorite recipes. Before my diagnosis of gluten intolerance, I baked a lot of biscotti. Every year, I had at least 5 different flavors going in my kitchen, to the point where I own several biscotti pans. One of my favorites was this gingerbread biscotti recipe. It is worth the time it takes to assemble and mix all the ingredients. It is even easier if you do have a biscotti pan, and I will definitely recommend that if you plan on baking it. It helps, you don't have to shape the logs. Now, this particular recipe is softer. I was never able to make mine as crispier as some of my other flavors, but I found that I liked this one softer better. The official cookie exchange date, by the way, is usually in December. I think it's December 22nd, but I'll have to double check that for this year. And you can definitely have fun with this, giving these as gifts or looking for certain themes. I also included a gluten-free vanilla biscotti recipe. And again, don't try to write anything down. There's a lot here. You'll receive this PDF in your email. And this recipe that you see uses a gluten-free flour that is a 1-to-1 ratio substitution with all-purpose flour. If you're shopping for gluten-free flour, you'll just want to check to see if it is the 1-to-1 or if you need to buy additional ingredients. I have found one that I really like from Bob's Mill, I believe. That's a 1-to-1, and I use that to bake my own bread frequently. Okay, and so this last one is not a cookie, but it is a seasonal favorite, and it takes some planning as you have to macerate the dried fruit. I highly recommend this fruitcake. I bake it every year, and it is a delight. Online, Alton Brown's recipe has a 5-star review from 327 reviewers. The internet gave him a 5-star, and it will make your house just smell wonderful. The history of fruitcake is incredibly rich and complex, so we're not going to just kind of jump into that per se. So instead, I'll just give you kind of some light info about it. We can actually thank the Romans for the oldest version, stemming from their use of it as an energy and fuel source for their soldiers. They had a version that was a mash of barley, honey, wine, and dried fruit. Our modern fruitcake resembles the recipe stemming from the Middle Ages in Europe, when spices became a thing and wealthy and elite chefs prepared elaborate meals with these edible status symbols. Interestingly, British and American versions differ from the rest. Ours are more cake-like, while the Stollen and Paton are more popular elsewhere. Candied fruit was important for our early American colonists, and it did allow them to preserve their produce into the holiday. So it made this a logical and tasty seasonal dessert. The dessert benefited enormously from the post office in 1896 and 1913, and those two acts made mail order foods available across the states. Today, there are regional differences within recipes in America. Southern states generally prefer bourbon, while more purists might only take brandy. Some people also let their fruitcake mature for 3 months before eating it. I've never tried that. But I have been creative and tried a lot of different types of dried fruit, whatever I could find at the market. So as I said before, all of these will be sent to you. And now I want to kind of turn the floor over and see if anyone has any questions, wants to discuss recipes. So I will stop sharing and see how everyone is doing this morning. And if you don't have anything to say, that's fine. It still feels early.
Hi, that was great. And you reminded me I have a biscotti recipe I need to share with you too.
Oh, excellent.
It's like a Christmas, it's, if I remember, it has green and red in it somehow. And I can't remember, like cranberries and maybe it's cranberries and pistachios. That's what it is.
Oh, pistachios sound delicious for that.
It's really, yeah, it's really good. And I'm wondering if I can make it gluten-free because I've never tried. Because being in my oldest became gluten-free, and so I had to change all of our recipes. And so I definitely have the pumpkin muffin recipe I'm going to send you. I have the gluten-free and the non-gluten-free.
I'm excited for the pumpkin one. I've only baked so far gluten-free bread. And that was a little bit of a difference because it almost looked more, the batter was just completely like more liquidy, I guess, more like a cake than when I'd done my own bread with flour and eating it. But I think it tastes really good.
I once baked them without, gosh, what did I forgot to add egg, I think. And it was the funniest thing because I'm like, why are they so squishy? And I mean, it tasted great, but I was like, this is not the right texture.
When I first got married, I baked for Valentine's Day, I baked Oreo biscotti for my husband, and I used confectioner sugar instead of powdered sugar. And we spent our evening cleaning the oven.
Oh no. What happened?
It spread. Yeah, it spread out everywhere, fell into the coils. He had a it was like trying to like scrape out the chunks. Hi, Nicole. And thank you, Nicole. I saw that you had you were going to send one as well, a recipe.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the recipe. I only like got up a little bit before this started. I had the fire alarm go off in my apartment building at 6 this morning.
Oh no.
But yeah, so I have this recipe for lemon cookies. Now that I've finally found it on the computer that I'm on, because that's a lot easier to copy. So I actually got this from Black Creek Pioneer Village near Toronto. And so it's based on an old recipe that they found from Domestic Economy and Cookery. The Cultivator and Country Gentleman. So I've got the original version of the recipe because they had that, as well as the modern version that they make. And they're a delicious, I don't know why it's not letting me paste.
Oh, that's so neat.
That sounds so good.
And yeah, they're delicious. It's a light, lovely lemon flavor. They're super easy to make. It makes tons of them. Oh, it's not letting me paste. Okay, hold on. Let me print that into like a PDF or something, and then we'll.
You can always send it to the info at Gmail. Send it to me later, and then I can eliminate it that way, so you don't have to.
Yeah. That would probably be easier than me fighting with computers when I'm barely awake.
I understand. Sometimes Zoom does weird things right as you're about to start a meeting.
Yeah.
Especially after your fire alarm incident.
Yes. Always super fun in the middle of the night being like, what?
Sounds so awful.
Yeah, and it's a little stressful. I mean, fortunately, it's never been anything major. Like whenever this happens, it's usually localized to the apartment, which is a good thing because my cats don't cooperate with me to try and take them with me. They bolt and hide under the bed, and there's no getting them out while the alarm is going off.
Oh no.
So, yeah, that's always slightly stressful.
Well,
But they're fine now.
hopefully the rest of your Saturday will be much better.
It's definitely already making a more positive turn.
Yeah, I find baking to be sometimes so relaxing when I'm stressed too, just because everything has to be so exact and precise. Although I do mix ingredient, or I do change chocolate chip ingredients sometimes. I won't put in like the full cup, I only put a half, because I've noticed some of the modern food bloggers put like so much stuff that you can't taste the base of the cookie or the base of the treat anymore. You're just kind of constantly eating the candy that's in it. But there are some really great food bloggers that I followed over the past few years and are still coming out with amazing holiday recipes. So I'll try to remember to send those just to you all as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I know what you mean about chocolate chips, because I sometimes I just dump whatever's left in the bag, and then like that can be a huge mistake because you're depending on how much is in there.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, I can't taste the cookie.
Exactly. It's just this giant like piece of candy. And biscotti is always like, with the biscotti pan, I got really spoiled because I didn't have to shape my own logs. And with some of the recipes I have, they're so crumbly. Like I beat Oreos, 16 Oreos with my rolling pin and put them in, and then I kind of shove them in if they don't work, because it does take a little time to craft it into the pan, into one dough. It can be crumbly and not as sticky.
I did not even know that there were biscotti pans.
I didn't either, actually. I've only ever tried to make this one kind. Well, actually, Fina, when she was little, wanted to make biscotti for her dad, and we found the red and green one for Christmas. So that was her Christmas present. But like, I had no idea there was a pan. It would have been easier.
It was a Christmas. Oh, and thank you for sharing the PDF too. I'm going to download that right now. Yes, it was a Christmas gift from my mother-in-law, and it is just it. I mean, you just dump the biscotti in, and then you pat it down. But you have to make sure you spray it with Pam, or do Pam flour, whatever you do, or else it's just a nightmare. Like I've dumped out my biscotti before and watched half of it fall out, and after hours of baking it, it can be really discouraging.
Oh, I know. It's really time intensive. I was surprised when we did it, because she was really little. I'm like, oh God, are you sure you want to do this? She's like, yes. I'm like, okay, here we go. Day-long project.
I think in doing like historical baking too, I tried historical cookies for my students one year, and it had a lot of caraway. And so when I gave it to my students, first of all, it was more like a weapon because they were so hard. The kids could have like hit themselves with it. But second, when they were eating it, if they liked rye bread, they were really excited by it. But if you don't really care for rye bread or don't want rye bread as a cookie, then it's a little disappointing. And unfortunately, I've been searching our archives in the museum, trying to see if we have any historical recipes, and we don't. I do know that we used to sell a little cute cherry pie type book in our gift shop, and it had a lot of recipes, I think from members like donated. So I've been looking to try to find that again, because they use a lot of Jell-O, and I've used Jell-O before in making cookies. And of course, in other things too. But it had a lot of good ideas and different things to do and try.
I love those recipe books where, I mean, that's why I was so excited to come today, because I love when people, because it's always somebody's favorite recipe, right? So it's got to, like, they're always interesting.
I have a few projects right now. Our museum is going into sleepy time mode. So it just means like you can't make an online tour. You can't schedule a tour online automatically. You have to contact me and then we make a tour, that sort of thing. But one of my ideas is to try to have people send in recipes, and we publish kind of like the Weems-Botts Museum cookbook. Because I think those cookbooks are just so amazing, because you always find like just the best ideas. You know, even if you have to adapt them. I have some from the 1940s, which I adapt, but I keep making those dinner recipes over and over again.
That would be great. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, it kind of makes the holidays, I think, more fun.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for coming today. Next week is our Bibliophiles, which is all happy. And then at the beginning of December, I will be having a Winter is Coming tea, and I will be sending I believe it's like a mulled cider berry type tea that I've picked. I was looking for the name this morning and I couldn't find it quickly, but I will be sending with that. And that program will focus on winter folklore, and I will be telling winter stories, and most of them will be a little scary because winter was a scary time, but it'll indulge in all the fun lore and history into the holidays. So I hope to see you all there too.
Nice.
I'll definitely be there.
We'll have a wonderful Saturday.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Good to see you, everybody.
Thanks, Lisa. That was really good.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.